Algorithm to insert a new node at the beginning of single linked list. Now there can be two cases in this case. First, the case single linked list is empty, so begin is pointing to null. So what we can do to insert a new node at the beginning of single linked list when single linked list is empty, first we have to create a temporary node which will be having two part, data and next part. In the data part we have to first store the value, and the next will be made it as null and makes the begin to point to the current node. So begin will point to temp is the newly created node, so this will become joined to the beginning of single linked list. Now imagine the single linked list is not empty. Now in this case we can see that the single linked list consists of two nodes with values a and b, and the first node is pointed by begin. That means begin is not null, so it is pointed to the first node. If this case, what we have to do, we have to first create a temporary node which consists of two part, data and next part. In the data part we have to store first value, so in the temp data we store the actual value what we want to store. Now we have to make a connections. What we have to make a connections, now this newly created temp should become the first node because we are inserting at the beginning of single linked list. Now in order to make this, now the temp should point to the current first node, so that current first node will become the second node after inserting C. So what we can do, we can make temp next to point to the first node. So temp next should point to the first node is begin, so we can make temp next to point to begin. So temp next will point to the first node begin. Now the begin should come and point to the newly created node temp. So begin should be equals to temp, so that begin will point to the newly created node. So this has been joined now. C becomes the first node. We have inserted a node at the beginning, then A, then B. So C is a node which is newly inserted at the beginning of the existing single linked list. So we can see the algorithm how we have performed these operations. We are writing the algorithm for inserting a node at the beginning of single linked list by using insert beg method. It takes the data parameter, which is the data what we want to insert at the beginning of single linked list. First we create a temporary node. The name of the temporary node is TMP, and now the TMP will be having two parts, the data part and next part. First we store the data. Our data is X, so our data X we will store into the node data part. So TMP data will become X. Now the TMP next. TMP's the next part should point to the first node. First node is begin. So TMP next should point to begin. That is TMP next equal to begin. The next part, the begin should come and points to the newly created node temp. So we can write begin equals temp. So begin will point to the newly created node TMP. Now in order to insert a node at the beginning of single linked list, first we need to create a free node named temp. Then we have to store the element, the newly created node data part. So we have to store the element that need to be inserted into the data part of the temp. Temp is a newly created node. Now we have to make the connections. To make the connections, make next part of temp, that is temp next, to point to begin. Now begin may be either the address of the first node when LL is not empty, or null when LL is empty. So temp next should point to the existing first node, which is begin. Now the next is begin should come and point to the newly created node temp. Make begin to point to new node temp.